has never been a more important time to move in a vegan direction. Whether you're ready to start, restart, or re-energize your vegan or plant-based practice, this podcast is for you. I'm Michele Olander, life coach, vegan, ADHD matriarch, travel lover, and smoothie loather. And I know that it's the details that get in the way of your vegan journey. But I like to believe that the obstacle is always the way. So every week we meet here where I translate the tools of life coaching and Stoic philosophy. I bring you actionable tips, some laughs, interesting guests, and vegan ideas for everyone at any age. All to help you veg your best. Episode 272, When Facts Backfire. Behavioral science, vegans, and the holidays. Hi guys, it's Michele, and well, the holiday season is upon us. At least in the U.S., we're coming up on Thanksgiving. So anyway, I thought we'd tackle something, well, I guess you could say timely for anyone trying to talk about vegan or plant-based choices with someone who doesn't agree or isn't supportive, or honestly, more likely, someone who doesn't know what the HE double hockey sticks you are even thinking. But you still have to actually interact with him or her thanks to birth, marriage, work, or some kind of living situation. And honestly, this same advice goes for any of us who have loved ones and friends who may be, looking at local or national or global issues in wildly different ways from ourselves. So how can we have more peaceful interactions this season? Maybe even productive conversations, instead of perhaps simmering or biting our tongues or rolling our eyes or even ending up in an epic argument. So I thought we would dig into today why facts backfire, why facts often fail in conversations, and why we feel so stuck, and what you could do instead to open up connection rather than shut it down. And by the end of this episode, maybe you'll have one way of approaching the holiday season with people that can maybe even shift the tone of conversation and maybe even change minds. I don't know. Or at least keep some relationships intact. Because honestly, facts really, really, really can backfire. They seem like they're just neutral. They seem like they're just, indisputable. But if you've ever been in a conversation where you were really sure you had done all the right research, you had the statistics, you had the reports and the papers, and somehow the other person was completely immune to those facts, and actually may have just dug in further into their point of view. Who hasn't had that situation? Because many of us think, no, I need to be armed with all the facts about industrial animal agriculture, worker safety, pollution, deforestation, eutrophication, animal cruelty, zoonotic diseases, human health impacts. And I think that turn of phrase, armed with the facts, yeah, that's actually the way it comes across to the people around us. Those facts, those statistics, that data, the reasons why many of us moved in a vegan or plant-based direction in the first place, and why we continue to make these choices to limit or eliminate animal products. And knowing and being able to cite these reports, these studies, documentaries, it's amazing. It's empowering even. But I would say rarely are they the gateway to someone else changing their views. And, this isn't just about veganism. Please pick any headline in the news this week. You'll see the same thing, I think. Why? Why? Because our human brains, we're not just simply rational machines. We are, we're identity machines. We are belonging machines. We are connection machines, emotional machines. When someone feels that their worldview, their self-worth, their group identity is under threat or being criticized, facts just don't land super effectively. In fact, facts land like attacks. Instead of opening minds, facts have an unfortunate habit of backfiring. And the very facts that you think are so important to your choices, they can actually trigger the urge for someone else to dig in, to double down, to push back with dismissiveness, with mockery, and even insults or anger. So, if you can't gracefully exit a polarizing conversation this holiday season, and let's face it, you and I probably can't, it might sound counterintuitive, but maybe consider forgetting the facts, at least for a while. Set those statistics aside. You know them. They matter to you. They might matter to me. Maybe you'll even offer them later on, but you'll offer them when someone actually asks for them. So what is this backfire effect that's going on? Well, behavioral scientist Gleb Tsipursky, he's a cognitive neuroscientist, a behavioral economist. He has studied how our brains make faulty, even honestly dangerous judgment errors with something we've talked about many, many times on the podcast, cognitive biases. He's written about something called the backfire effect. The idea that when we are presented as humans with facts that somehow feel like they threaten our identity, we don't tend to change our minds. We actually harden our pre-existing thoughts. Gleb Tsipursky, others have noted that people tend to place their sense of identity, competence, and group affiliation ahead of pure rationality. And for goodness sake, food is one of those things. Food and our buying habits, our connection habits, our feasting habits, our celebrating habits, these are very, very strongly anchored with our sense of identity and group affiliation. So if a fact suggests that maybe I've been wrong or maybe my group is wrong, we for sure resist it. We may ignore it because our brains very much prefer to feel belonging than to feel being right. So when a vegan-oriented fact, comes up and we feel that discomfort, maybe I'm doing a bad thing. Maybe I've got it wrong. Maybe my family's wrong. Maybe my culture is kind of, backward on this. Maybe she thinks she's better than me. Well, if we're thinking those things, our self-protection system will kick in. So repeating facts, spouting statistics, pushing documentaries, it can feel like you're having a reasonable, objective conversation, but it often triggers the exact opposite effect in the listener. So Gleb Tsipursky actually offers his own personal framework for avoiding this spiral. He calls it EGRIP. EGRIP, it's one of those great acronyms: emotions, goals, rapport, information, positive reinforcement. And, we don't have to go on and on with it. You can look into it yourself. But emotions, acknowledge how people feel about an issue. Goals, what do we both want? Health, family, compassion, a lovely Thanksgiving dinner, a livable planet. Build rapport, build connection, empathy, use curiosity. And then, and only then, offer information, the data, the stats, the studies, the reports. And finally, offer some positive reinforcement, some gratitude, some encouragement, some authentic thanks for having been open. And that sequence, EGRIP, emotions, goals, rapport, information, positive reinforcement, that sequence mirrors what behavioral science tells us about how our minds change. Connection first, then change later. So when we notice that our facts haven't opened doors, the penny hasn't dropped in someone when they have heard our sparkling, brilliant argument for plant-based eating or for a vegan lifestyle, when those facts don't work, we may find ourselves speaking louder or enunciating in a very pedantic way, or maybe being a little patronizing, or offhandedly shaming people into listening. And no, that does not work. I would love you to tell me when you found that worked. Studies continue to find that arguing about beliefs hardens opinions. And not only does it harden the opinion of the person you're speaking to, it even makes the bystanders who are hearing this more sympathetic to the person being lectured at. And if you even sound slightly smug or superior, the other person will sense that immediately, and they completely stop hearing your message, and they start defending their own ego, their own sense, their own way in the world. So this is where we get that classic cycle of the horrible Thanksgiving. You present your facts, they resist. You point out their resistance, they resist more. The tension is palpable, and it's not the Thanksgiving table that I'm particularly interested in being at. So the good news is that there is basically a simpler, science-backed move that can change the tone of conversations. And in The Laws of Connection, it's a book by science writer David Robson, The Laws of Connection, he describes research from Stanford showing that when someone opens a discussion with, "Oh, really? I was interested in what you were saying. Can you tell me more about that?" The other person becomes significantly more open-minded. That one question, instead of you speaking your truth, signaling, "I think you're worth listening to. I care about your perspective. I'm curious about what that means to you. I'm not here to win. I'm here to understand." When you create that signal first, the facts you bring later, maybe even much, much later, then they have some chance to land. So how does that look in real life? Well, for a vegan transition conversation, instead of, "Don't you know how bad dairy is?" You could try, "No, I don't eat dairy anymore, but that's just me. What are your thoughts about dairy?" It doesn't mean you're compromising your values. It just means you're doing the human thing first, the relational work first. So if a neighbor or a spouse or a coworker says, "I'm never giving up steak. Don't tell me I can't eat steak," you don't open into a fact barrage about greenhouse gases or worker exploitation or water usage or deforestation. Instead, you ask, so beef's really important to you. Why? Tell me everything. And then, you know what you do? You listen. No interrupting, no mental rebuttals, just curiosity. You might even echo what they say, what they tell you about the taste of it, or the tradition, or the social connection. And you hear that. And maybe if the vibe is calm and respectful, You continue with something like, so you really wouldn't feel good about limiting beef the way I do. And now you've opened rapport. You've acknowledged their identity. You've lowered the threat. And if they ask what made you change, that's your moment. That's your moment when they ask to share a story or a statistic that resonated with you, not before. And this is not, I know sometimes, especially when we're new or when we have a very visceral feeling about these things, it feels a little bit like surrender, but it's not. This approach does not mean giving up your truth. I think it means increasing your effectiveness. Yes, your facts do matter. They matter to me, they matter to you, but facts don't matter to people who can't hear them. So how you present these facts, they matter even more. So Tsipursky's EGRIP model, emotions, goals, rapport, information, positive reinforcement, that model reminds us that persuasion is not about proving someone wrong. It's about removing the negative dynamic in the conversation so that you have some chance of being heard. And I always use the analogy of sowing seeds. The seed, yes, that's your fact, but it will only grow in fertile ground. And if the soil is rocky, the metaphorical soil, if it's rocky with defensiveness or anger or shame or contempt, nothing takes root. So your challenge this week and going into the holidays, maybe it's everyone's challenge, as we head into gatherings with family and friends and coworkers, identify a conversation when it comes around you, big or small, where you might use this kind of magic question. It could be about food or climate or kids or women's rights, anything. There's a lot out there to talk about. You could say, instead of beginning with what you think, I was interested in what I was hearing you say. Tell me more about what you think. And then listen. See how the tone shifts. Notice how your own internal energy changes when you stop insisting on your facts or your point of view leading. Did the person you're speaking with feel more heard? Did you feel less frustrated? No, it's not always easy, but here's the truth. This isn't just about veganism. This is human behavior 101. And as much as it may frustrate us, if you've been a parent, you've seen this. We can't change minds with facts alone. No, facts existed long before I went vegan, but until I was able to see how I could reconcile those facts with my identity and my lifestyle, and while I just thought of it as impossible, I wasn't able to change. But we can shift conversations if we are willing to offer curiosity and humility and a little bit of willingness to listen. That's how we veg our best. By being the person who opens a doorway and doesn't slam it or insist that we're the only way of playing the game. We're playing a long, long game on these topics. Certainly in the vegan world we are, but on many topics we are playing a long game. And as I said, for a long time, the facts didn't make me vegan either. So let's model what we actually know with humility and openness and compassion. And I think that could go a long way this season as you veg your best.
Veg Your Best podcast production, music, and editing by Charlie Weinshank. Thanks, Charlie. Before you go, it would mean so much to me and the Veg Your Best team if you would hit subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, or share with someone you think might be interested. Something about algorithms, it helps bump us up a little in the rankings, and that's the best way to help others find the podcast and for us to find our audience. So, until next week, make it easy and veg your best.